I call this meeting of the MSAD 49 Board of School Directors to order. Roll call. Bouchard. Here. Here. Brown Woods. Here. Haverly. Here. Davis Folsom. Here. Dumont is unable to make it tonight. Hashi. Here. Hussey is unable to make it tonight. Knowles.
Here.
Lambert is unable to make it tonight. Michoud. Here. White is unable to make it. Williams. Here. The Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes of the October 7th, 2021 school board meeting?
Second.
It has been moved by Melissa, seconded by Neil, to accept the minutes for the October 7th, 2021 school board meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? 9. 0. Citizens input. Before we begin citizens input, if there is anyone from the public who would like to address the board, we are adhering to the 3-minute policy that we have. So everyone has 3 minutes. We are asking you to state your name, first and last, and the town in which you live, or if you are an employee of the district, please let us know. So if anyone would like to address us.
David Hoagland. I teach in this district. I live in Winslow. I teach band at the 3 elementary schools. And I'm asking the board to be proactive, looking ahead. In the news today, it's saying that it could be soon that vaccines for the young children, our elementary students, may get emergency use authorization sometime soon. So for this board, should be thinking about that if you are going to recommend, facilitate, reward vaccines for the elementary students. And there is science homework, as it were, to be done because of that. The risk-benefit analysis is not being talked about in the mainstream news, and there's data, real scientific, hardcore data that shows that the risk to an 80-year-old of COVID disease is 10,000 times more than the risk to a 10-year-old. Given that beyond vanishing rare chance of serious harm or death to our elementary students, and frankly to our junior high and high school students, as I mentioned last time, there ought to be a really serious look at, since it's so vanishingly rare that they should be harmed by the disease, are the potential side effects of the vaccines riskier? And there's very hard data showing that that's very likely in all of our students right up through age 18. And we should remind our public, remind our parents of things they may not even be thinking about. the fact that none of these vaccines are fully approved. Many people think Pfizer has been. It has not. There's a vaccine that was produced by Pfizer that's split off. It's called Comirnaty, and it's been approved officially by the FDA. It's not available anywhere. All of the products available now are only experimental, investigational, emergency use authorization. The one that was approved is not yet available on the market, and the ingredients of that are likely different. They're allowed to tweak, change, significantly change. So parents can depend on the school board to say, okay, yep, bring your child for vaccination. One of them is approved. Well, none of them are approved. And obviously, we should remind parents that in terms of 2-year safety data, 3-year safety data, 5-year safety data, 10-year safety data, there is zero long-term safety. Nothing, 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, nothing. And it is a totally different product than any vaccines of the other vaccines they take. So I'm asking this board to do their homework. It's a very serious responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Moving on, before we begin old business, I just wanted to address that we all understand that this is an emotional and stressful time for all of us, and we value everyone's opinion, but we are asking everyone to please be respectful. No outbursts during the time in which the board is conducting the district business. What will happen if there are any outbursts, I'm going to pause the meeting and ask you to politely leave. If that does not happen, then we will have someone escort you out. Anyway, so moving on to old business, the COVID case update and notification process.
Thank you, Danielle. As I began in our last board meeting on October 6th, I updated the board on the number of cases that have been reported by school, and I give you a copy of this chart, and this is a document that I intend to publish on our website. Many school districts have moved to a weekly update. I think I'm one of the last ones that's still pushing out the daily and the robocall. And it was easier when there were fewer cases, and keeping up with the report, the notification to the community is difficult in the timing because of the pools coming back and in those cycles. So what I am going to do is wrap up this week and send a notice to the community. I have the letter prepared that this chart and information published on our site will replace those. They're template letters. I did send one out last night in response to a conversation that I had with the outbreak investigator and epidemiologist from the CDC, the person's assigned to this school district, in regard to the high school in particular and the volume of cases there. We have 3 schools in outbreak. As I mentioned in the letter last night, it's the high school, junior high, and Benton Elementary School. And as you likely reviewed the SOP, the provision in that is it's open. The outbreak status is open with the CDC until 14 days has passed without a positive case, and that's a real difficult hill to climb right now. Although it seems to me that the activity is waning as far as positive cases. At Lawrence, at high school, we saw a spike over a period of a couple of weeks, and it has waned. But I'll just read these, and I guess the thing to notice and to draw your attention to, and some of you have pointed that out, is the distinction between close contacts. The CDC requires that we notify the school who is deemed a close contact. Did you come in contact with someone in school as a student or an employee who was COVID positive? And then the last column is the number needing to quarantine from that. So depending on how many we have vaccinated, that's one of the exemptions from quarantining. How many people are participating in the pool testing, that's another exemption from quarantining. Have you had COVID in the past 90 days? There's an exemption from quarantining. Then in addition to that, one of the other mitigation strategies that the board adopted in August was the universal masking, which changes the radius around the positive case. And in a minute, Natasha Varden, who's been good enough to join us here tonight, our Clinton Elementary School nurse, is going to take time to talk specifically about the contact tracing, the close contacts, and determining what individuals actually need to quarantine. But I'll just go over this chart first. Albion, to date, 5 cases, and this was as of the 19th, a few days ago. We had to have time to put this together. The number of close contacts to date, 76. The number needing to quarantine to date, 60. Benton Elementary School, 13 cases, 114 close contacts, and 70 of those close contacts needing to quarantine. Clinton Elementary School, 21 cases since we opened school, 144 close contacts, 75 needing to quarantine. Fairfield Primary School, 4 cases, 37 close contacts, and 37 needing to quarantine. Lawrence Junior High School, 20 cases, 268 close contacts, 91 needing to quarantine. And Lawrence High School, 58 cases, 783 close contacts, and 308 individuals, and that includes always students and staff needing to quarantine. So those are our to-date totals, and it's trended up surely. And as soon as we opened, we were opening with cases, but we are finding that the pool testing in particular is helping. And as was mentioned just a moment ago, Pfizer, the expectation is in the timeline that there will be emergency approval of the Pfizer vaccine, where 5 to 11-year-olds will be eligible. The Maine Department of Education and the CDC are looking to partner with schools in the way like we do with flu clinics, and offer that opportunity for parents if they wish, and consent to their child being vaccinated. So the state is looking for us to facilitate that. And we do have our regular flu clinics coming up soon for the influenza. So that is just some information we have. And now, Natasha, if you could share with us your protocols that are based on the SOP out of the CDC, the document.
Okay, can you all hear me? I asked Roberta if I could come and speak tonight because there's a lot of questions regarding contact tracing, who we determine to be close contacts, and who should be in quarantine. So I wanted to come and explain what my process is at Clinton and which the other nurses' processes as well. First, either a parent is going to report a positive case to us or identify a positive case via the rapid antigen testing. Once I have identified a positive case, if they are in school, they're immediately placed in our isolation room. We call the parents for dismissal, and I instruct and educate them on what isolation means, when they can return to school, and what it means for any members of their household that's living with them. We have to determine the infectious period next, which the infectious period is defined as the 48 hours prior to symptom onset, or if they are not having any symptoms, then the day that they took their positive test. The next part is like the most crucial part, and that is seating plans. I know it may be a little bit different at the junior high and high school, but in the elementary level, we have seating plans for pretty much everything. And that is my go-to. I have what I call my Bible, and I carry with me wherever I go. Because I can get notified at 6 o'clock at night or on the weekend, so I always have it with me to refer to. So I go by the classroom seating chart first. And because our school has the universal masking policy, any student within 3 feet of that positive student would be considered close contacts. If we had not adopted the universal masking policy, then that distance would have increased to 6 feet. That only applies to students and not staff members. And that only applies in the classroom setting. So unfortunately, having all of our kids back does tend to make spacing a little more difficult. We have on average 20 kids per class at the elementary level, and it's nearly impossible to space them out 3 feet apart in those classrooms. So they are right next to each other. A lot of them are sitting like this, and so I basically 3 feet away from them, and they're the close contacts. The next piece that I look at is what specials in the elementary level that they had the past 48 hours, such as art, music, library, and I look at those seating charts. And again, they're classroom settings, so 3 feet of distancing. Then I look at the cafeteria seating charts, and that's a 6 feet distance because they're unmasked and they're eating, and that is also with the SOP. And I then go to the bus, which can be the trickiest. Not all students ride the bus, but that's what I have to find out. Do they ride the bus? And it's 6 feet on the bus as well. So I generally will look at the bus seating charts that I have, and then before I go and actually identify them as a close contact, I make contact with the bus drivers because there's a lot of variables that could come into play. Maybe they missed the bus in that infectious period. Maybe they didn't ride this week or whatever. They were picked up early. They didn't ride the bus home. So I don't just refer to the names given to me. I take the time, and I know that other nurses do too, to investigate, are they really a close contact? Once I have made my list of close contacts, and I just want to restate the definition of a close contact, and that is anyone that comes in direct contact, such as touching, with a positive person in the 48-hour infectious period, or anyone that has been within 3 to 6 feet, depending on if you're a staff or student, for a cumulative period of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period during that infectious period. So I create the list of all those names that I've deemed close contacts, and then I start crossing people out. Anyone that's vaccinated, anyone that's tested positive for COVID in the past 90 days, and can present me proof that they indeed were positive in the past 90 days, and anyone that participates in the weekly testing. The next step is probably the most important step and most time-consuming, and that is that we call all the parents of the students that actually need to quarantine first, especially if it's 6 o'clock the night before school night. I want to contact them as soon as possible so that they can make arrangements and so that they know their child cannot come to school the next day. I instruct and educate them on the quarantine time frame and what it means and when they can come back to school. I also make sure to tell them that they notify me of any signs or symptoms, or if they get them tested and they end up coming back positive while in quarantine, because we have had some kids that were deemed close contacts come back positive. Per the SOP, students cannot test out of quarantine by obtaining a negative test result. This has always been the case since the beginning of the pandemic, and I've seen adults and students that test positive on day 9 or 10 of the quarantine period, so that's really important why they complete the full 10 days. The next step that I do, I notify the parents of the students that are exempt from quarantine, but I do have to let them know that they were a close contact. If they are a close contact and participate in pool testing, I let them know that they still need to quarantine from the community, so they can't go to the stores, they shouldn't be going to extracurricular activities, to church, etc. And I let them know which date they should return back to school, or stop doing that piece. But they can, if they're in pool testing, they're coming to school, they're riding the bus. But we do obviously urge them, the parents, to do what we urge all parents, and that is to monitor them for signs and symptoms, and if they have any, don't come to school. If they're vaccinated, they don't have to be quarantined from the community or school, but again, monitor themselves for signs and symptoms. And then, per the CDC, if the person has tested positive for COVID-19 either by a PCR or a rapid antigen test, they do not need to be quarantined from school or the community for 90 days after the positive test. However, the school will need to see proof of that positive and also monitor themselves for signs and symptoms. The last piece of this process is I make sure that HR, usually through my principal, I usually make sure that HR is aware and the staff that were identified as close contacts, and they instruct them further on whether or not they need to quarantine. Then I have to submit a contact tracing log to the main DOE and CDC. I have to also submit a positive case notification form to the main CDC. And then I make sure that all staff that work with the students that are placed in quarantine are made aware of these students in quarantine so that they can arrange for the schoolwork that needs to be done while they're in quarantine. So that is the process of contact tracing. I just wanted to just really say that we're not just like saying, oh, all these people need to quarantine. We're really like investigating and making sure it's only the people that really need to quarantine. There have been cases where there's just no way to know if it was just 2 or 3 people that were contacts or the whole class. So that's why some of these cases are showing larger numbers of close contacts that need to quarantine. Each case is different and there are many variables. But our goal is to keep them all in school as much as possible, which is why we promote physical testing. And I'd like to just note 2 things on physical testing that I've learned since I've been doing it for a few weeks now. I want people to be clear that if you are in close contact and you participate in people's testing, the exemption from school quarantine only applies if it's an in-school contact. It does not apply if you were a close contact, say at church, Girl Scouts, football, or I'm not clear exactly on Lawrence football, but PAL football. Those are not school-related activities. So you would still have to do the quarantine for 10 days, even if you are in pool testing. I think there's some confusion on that, and I make sure whenever I am educating parents about pool testing, when they call me and ask questions, that they realize that it's not going to always get you out of quarantine. And the other thing I want to say about pool testing is that I can say confidently that I have identified at least 4 students in my school that were not showing any signs of COVID, and these students were positive for COVID. So we stopped that spread of this virus right in its tracks because of pool testing. And that is all.
Natasha, thank you for sharing that. And the first thing I want to do, I think you've clearly illustrated how labor-intensive this process is and how thorough and our nurses are, and yourself, and how time-consuming this process is, but it's worth the investment, like Natasha's pointed out. Detecting the illness early and preventing students from being excluded from school is a vital part of why we're doing this. And I will say that our nurses are doing this also with great integrity. They are following the standards set, and it's an expectation. It's a requirement. Components of that SOP, much of it are, and there is no permissive or advisory language. It's mandatory. And the epidemiologist I just spoke with yesterday clarified that. So thank you, because it's not an easy job, and making those calls, you have people who are grateful, thank you for the notice, and then we have the other responses, and to just being sensitive to our nurses are doing their job, our administrators, our teachers, people are doing their job in this environment, and it is not easy, it's unpleasant, it is raised a lot of, as Danielle pointed out, emotional responses, and I thank you for that work. And in a minute, you may have questions of Natasha, but this is all born out of the SOP that you have available to you. One thing I will note, and I meant to mention it was when I was talking about what I posted last night, our nurses are finding this. These pieces of the narrative don't get out, but we are wholly reliant on people reporting to us, except what is discovered in the pool testing and the follow-up by next, is that there is a positive case. And we also have individuals showing up into our school buildings who aren't feeling well, and they might think it's of no consequence, but it's a huge consequence when it turns out that people are excluded from the workplace, excluded from school, children are excluded from school because individuals are showing up. So we're wholly reliant on the self-screening at home and not coming over that threshold or getting on those school buses. It is no small thing. I spoke with Deanna Turlo a few days ago where a person came to her office visibly ill. So this is days and, brewing. Oh, this is a Monday and certainly Saturday, Sunday, likely not feeling well. And there's a positive test. And, by 10:30, the person has been to a lot of places in the school building. In particular in the senior high, students are more stationary in elementary settings. But, take the high school, for example, the junior high, where they move from class to class. The high school has added another period, so those are 5 new contexts where other people are in the space versus the 20 that were there all day. And so it just explodes. So I can't impress upon you enough to please, it's my plea, to stay home if you're sick, self-monitor. And also the mitigating, pool testing, it's making a difference as far as who is excluded from school. And this is one of the things that the epidemiologist spoke with me about, short of closing schools. We have a lot of cases that have happened in that high school in particular. And, the CDC makes recommendations for closure and anything else that we can do. So maybe educating the public more on the importance of trying to use some of those mitigation strategies, staying home if you're sick. So there's my plea. Our goal is to keep our schools open and keep them safe, but keep them open because it is very difficult when there are closures. We got through last year hybrid, and prior to that closure in March for everyone, March to June. It's tough, and we're trying our best to manage this. So thank you, Natasha. If there are questions of Natasha about the procedure.
Thank you. Just thank you. That's a lot of extra work above and beyond your normal, in quotation marks, job requirements. Thank you. Thank you to all the other nurses in the district and the administrators that have to do this also. Does anyone else have any comments?
So I have a couple of questions for Roberta, probably has this data. Since the last time we met, has there been an increase in people opting into pool testing?
I didn't get that statistic. I think it's pretty static, stable. Usually people are after the fact. I want my child to join the pool. I spoke with Principal Bowers just Monday, and they're still hovering at about 32%. Maybe the other principals could speak to the numbers.
We had a small increase, I think.
Okay.
We've got about 107 students, so about the same grade as Principal Bowers.
Nurse Carson, do you want to tell us about what?
Half of our population and tell them their kid has to stay home for 10 days, a lot of them quickly sign up right after.
So, follow-up is, statewide, we're at about 80% staff faculty rate for vaccinations. How does our school district stack up to that? Are we at that ratio of reaching that level of vaccinated staff?
Employee vaccinations? Well, the update was just there. I don't know if you looked at the website by schools. No, I would say we lag. And in our recent survey, so these are monthly surveys through DHHS, CDC, they're anonymous surveys, like the information, like who is not communicated to the CDC. And what we did, because the first round we had very low participation, our form does not track who internally is responding to that survey. So this time we had more respond to it, and it could be that people misunderstood, and if their itineraries they went, and I'll answer for Benton, and I'll answer for Clinton, and I'll answer for Albion, but we had more responses than we have the 400 plus employees. So I don't know if you looked at the site, but you'll see that there were issues with the numbers reporting, but we were able to correct what was first reported as extraordinarily low rates, and they're approaching par, but we're below, as it's reflective of Somerset County. I know we straddle two counties, but a lot of our students and staff, we employ high school, junior high, Fairfield Primary here in Somerset, and those are low.
I'm sorry, can I add something about the pool testing and people signing up? A lot of parents that I've been talking to don't have any idea what it is, and I know that we have put all that information out there every way that is possible. But I will say, and I don't know if the other principals could really relate us to their staff, because it may help with their participation rate, is we, in this month's newsletter that we send out every month at Clinton, I included a whole spiel about pool testing along with the consent, and I got a lot of consents back after doing that. And also, Mrs. Gordon sends out her weekly messages to parents, includes that piece in it, and then I have some teachers who have really honed in on sending the information home. So that has increased our participation goal testing.
And Julie, you had brought that up earlier about our messaging for that, and likewise, and as I met with Principal Bowers, being more proactive and maybe engaging the public in some sort of virtual forum, and educating people on the usefulness of it to prevent the spread and the reintroduction of a new exposure, but also to bring down those quarantining numbers. So there's more that we can do in addition to a vaccine coming out potentially, according to Dr. Shaw and the Deputy Commissioner today noted it probably will open on November 8th. That rollout can begin.
And I love that newsletter, which that's great that was done. The last thing I have is, kind of agrees with what Danielle was saying earlier with emotions about the situation. On August 19th, when we voted to return to school for the fall opening, a lot of constituents spoke. And one of the things that was said in that time period is we're voting on this now, but we'll revisit it in October. And I just want to know, just because I want to make sure that we're transparent and we're keeping and maintaining the trust of our constituents in this whole situation. Have we looked at the SOP to see if any possible changes can be made specifically around masks and things along those natures? And I do want to point out that I fully support masking.
Can you please speak? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Is that working?
No. Is it working?
talked about revisiting the mask mandates in October with the SOP. That's one of the things we said to the constituents when they spoke here that day when we voted on it. And I just want to make sure we're maintaining trust with those constituents and actually revisiting that. So I want to see what, I'm wondering what may have been done or discussed or looked at in regard to that.
Yeah, and that's what and again, we're one of the few school districts that do nearly the daily reporting. And what has happened from August 19th prior to school opening, and those cases that we're looking at, they have gone from nothing at the opening to exploding. And if you compare, what has happened at Lawrence High School, I think embodied, these are very high numbers locally. No one even comes close to that. There is no rationale for taking away one of the mitigation strategies. If our revisiting meant, what does the COVID outlook look like? In the what is posted on the website, I've stated in that introduction, what does the health environment look like? If any of the board members feel that the health environment looks static or better than it did when we set that, please, share your thoughts. But as Natasha pointed out and what the SOP illustrates, you remove the mask mandate, you'll not only, increase the likelihood of the spread of this illness. And, this is not it's a barrier and it impedes is what it does. And the ruling around contact tracing, so that radius goes from 3 feet to 6 feet. And much larger swaths of students will be in the quarantining zone until we get a greater threshold of pool testing and vaccination. I mean, those are the things that prevent that. And so, to the point, and thank you for asking that question, I'm reporting nearly daily as far as transparency to the community and public. Here are the cases. I'm laying out the numbers. Actually, I started with updating at the October 6th meeting. I went over this chart and the cases since we've opened. Here's where we're at. And if you do the trajectory, it is not on a downward trend. It's not a static trend. It went up like this. And we do have the attention of the CDC. And since that time, 3 of our schools have reached that outbreak status. And we are following the must-dos of this SOP. And that involves, and it's a difficult part, the quarantining or exclusion from school. What people choose to do when they home or away from here is their own decision. But recommending one of the options is to close the schools, and that is not something I think in the long term or even short term is more in the catastrophic level. Given that we're just bringing everyone back, trying to reintegrate our kids, getting them normalized back to school. This is not an invasive measure right now. It's uncomfortable, it's miserable. No one enjoys wearing the mask, but we have no evidence to support that is waning. And I don't know of any district that adopted this and has moved away from it. In fact, the ones in August, the school units that said they were going to open as an option to do this pretty quickly, like probably within a week of opening or even prior to opening, reversed it. So I see that nowhere as a trend in this state. Even though the state's doing a really good job, the state of Maine is doing a really good job of controlling the spread among our population. It's still there. So in full transparency, get your point. I've been doing that every day, and I began actually talking about it at the last meeting. This is the information we have. This is our process. And you also had received an email from our chair regarding our legal counsel's position on the SLP. Just to clarify, as I said, there is advisory language in here that Felton pointed out, he's the person who came in and did our board training at the beginning of the year, and he is the council that I work with, the board works with. But the language around isolation, quarantining, and these are not easy decisions, as Natasha says, looking very carefully at the investigation, who needs to be excluded for the sake of not spreading this. There are words that are must and shall, and those are compulsory. And I don't know if anyone had any questions about that. I did, as I said, the superintendents had a virtual forum with Dr. Shaw on Monday, and certainly superintendents are asking questions too. It is unsettling and difficult and a challenge to try to have everyone back in the school building, but still address the spread and trying to mitigate the spread of COVID. He did not indicate that the standard operating procedure is going to change in the near future, but as I've looked at the document, there have been 20 revisions since it was published, it was a year ago this summer. And what that is adapting to the environment, adapting to, I believe, how can we continue to operate schools with children present in full force, not do a hybrid, and still prevent the spread of the illness. This SOP replaced last year's framework. We were under an executive order from the governor, but the DOE compelled all schools to adhere to that framework, and a lot of it was around these safety measures, and distancing was part of it. One of the reason why we were in hybrid last year is because we could not ensure that 3 feet of distance among kids. It was 3 feet among kids, and it was 6 feet between kids and adults. And I've talked about this, we have new people to the board since we went down that road, but literally, we meet as an administrative team this summer, and they sent people back to your classrooms and measuring, and I was getting, we're doing, trying to find a way to fit everyone in, and we cannot. And as it was pointed out at the last board meeting, talking about class sizes and event building, yeah, we have larger sections of kids in there. If, we can't compare ourselves to other, school units. We have how we're staffed. Our funding relates to the section sizes and how many people we employ and the real estate in those classrooms. So since we could not guarantee that 3 feet, we have quarantining happening in the rooms. Otherwise, we would have been in a hybrid last year. So if it were possible to make sure that everyone's at least 3 feet apart in all of our classrooms, then we would have even less quarantine, but it's not possible. Otherwise we would have been fully open last year. I think wherever it's possible, teachers are working very hard and administrators are working very hard to make sure that we minimize this. The seating chart's a vital component to know who sat where, and for people, it's another thing that our teachers are, trying to keep track of, who went where and how long were they there. And that's hard, especially with younger children even. But so that is my response to your question. I hope I've been thorough in answering it.
Yes, I do think you have, and I think it's evident just based on the way you speak on the matter that when they come here and speak, my concern is that they feel like they're not being heard. And I think that the way you address this illustrates that you do hear what they're saying, and you're trying your best to take the information you have to accommodate that. But it's just not an option right now. But regardless of that, they are being heard, and you do have them in mind when these things are discussed.
Yeah, and unfortunately, my goodness, if I could, I think anyone in the room would make all this go away, and bring us back to where we were. Unfortunately, this is the deck we're dealing with here, and the hand we're dealing with here, and just trying to work through it. Thank you.
Also, we are going, or we're planning on revisiting this in the beginning of December to see if the SOP has been revised yet again or anything like that. I think at least for me to keep looking at the data to see if our trend is in the district is going up or down or stagnant. I think that's really important for us to make the best possible decision that we can to keep the kids in school, as many kids in school 5 days a week as possible. Does anyone else have any questions for Brenda? Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha.
I'm moving on to new business, instructional improvement plan results.
Okay. Maybe we could start with the high school. Mr. Bowers.
Sit there.
You may.
That happens at the Thanksgiving table a lot. Is this on?
It is.
Okay. So the recap of the instructional improvement plan from last year was shared, I think this summer.
Hey, Mr. Bowers, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think your mic is on.
Should be a yellow one. Yeah, it's showing.
All right.
Okay. So it was shared, and I don't have, I'd rather not cover that. One of the goals that we had for last year was to improve our attendance and truancy, lower that rate. That didn't happen because of the climate we were in. So that goal will be carried into this year. What I'm looking at doing this year, the big focus has been the social emotional learning piece with the students coming back from a hybrid year where we had essentially half of 2/3 of the student body in school on any given day because 1/3 was totally remote. And it's important we felt to bring everybody back, be integrated with the workings of the school, focus on culture, climate. Our two youngest, the freshmen, have been out of school for a year and a half, so they hadn't even, their junior high year was a half a year. The sophomores were out, so we had half the student body that hadn't really experienced high school yet. So our focus was to reintegrate them. We took time during the first week or so of school and extended our home periods. We had the teachers focus on this relationship building and getting to know the kids. We had class meetings that we were able to conduct, Brian and myself in the auditorium. We didn't have a school-wide assembly just because of the spacing and whatnot. We were able to have each class now, so we were able to meet face-to-face and go through what our expectations were, what we were hoping we would accomplish this year with school. Goals-wise, we wanted to, bring back some normalcy, which we've done, but we've also had some impacts due to COVID. But some of the normal things, we've had our extracurricular activities going, so sports, marching band, drum, they're practicing for doing play rehearsals now. Homecoming week is this week. I did cancel the dance just because I couldn't pass a straight face test with me as far as, having a big group come together, even though we were going to wear masks. we were gonna hold it outdoors, it was still gonna be a confined space in the tennis court area, so I did put a thought to that, and hopefully we'll be able to hold a dance, I told them we would once the trajectory was going down, we kind of passed it on early with the contacts we've had. And just coincidentally with the contacts and number of cases we've had, you know, a large part of it, the big bump has been in the lower freshman class. And that may be because they're having to ride a bus to school, they don't have the separation that some of the older kids have. They may not be involved in some of the things or have vaccination yet. So we seem to see the biggest impact has been on the freshmen. But hopefully we'll test them on, we'll be able to move on to that some more. So some things. The teachers have been focusing on finding out where the kids are content-wise, where they can backfill, they do reteaching and whatnot, and then trying to move forward. We've done NUIA testing in early October, so we'll get results back from there, and that should help guide instruction. We've got a proposed academic support specialist within the new ESSER funding grants to hopefully bring a person on board that will be able to help the academically at-risk kids and not only help them with the academic side of things, but maybe even look towards job and career. The source of strength I told you about already, we're implementing that. The food services kitchen had put together breakfast at the Bellevue College, so there's leftovers that they can come by during in between passions from period 1 to 2 or block 1 to 2 and grab a hot meal that they made or they got in during breakfast. Some kids come in after the bell and the kitchen's closed down, but there'll be some warm breakfast sandwiches or eggs or whatnot that they can pick up. We've got some kids back in are able to see their guidance counselor. We've got Alice Hannon's on board this week. She came in to be guidance counselor, so she's getting acquainted with the students. One of the things that we're going to do as a faculty for this year to help with not only climate but with professional growth in dialogue, just talk about grading, good practices, and just, I think teachers kind of come in and learn the grading aspect. And some things are excellent, and some things are just market tradition and old school thought. I think for us and to improve not only climate but also how we're impacting kids and motivating the kids. Grading's got a lot to do with it. I'd rather it not be a carrot and stick, but that's the way tradition's been used. Excuse me. So those are the three goals: professional dialogue on grading practices, understanding the need behind the grade, what it truly reflects, improve attendance rate, and then the social emotional learning piece. And like I said, the results of last year's school improvement plan, the attendance piece, we didn't hit, so we're going to continue with that. The other goals will improve the remote instruction and whatnot, and we did a good job of that. We'll also use staff time and workshop time to put on some internal things, whether it's talking about grading or what best practices people use in the classrooms. We've got a workshop coming on the 12th, and we're planning on having a sexual assault person from the state come in and do a training at the school staff meeting, teachers meeting. She's from Children's State Partnership.org. Kathleen Carey is her name. So she's going to come in and do an hour-long session, and hopefully we're going to put together some other sessions that we can kind of workshop on and rotate through. And the third thing was from last year was to improve communication outreach efforts with all stakeholders, and that's something that will be part of a continuous plan, but not something that I focused on this year. But we will be reaching out and trying to host some online social things. And we were talking with Roberta this week, Deanna and I, about reaching out and doing much like, I'm sorry, I don't remember. Natasha, much like she just did, and do it, to be able to have Q&A. It's much easier to look at us either face-to-face or through Google Meets and ask some questions than be hit with your son and daughter stuff at home, and then, you know, the stress of whatever's going on at home just compounds things, and sometimes the reaction time is positive. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. But be glad to entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer.
Thank you.
Mr. Boyd, thank you.
Took a page out of Mr. Bauer's book. A review of last year's construction improvement plan. Just kind of go through one by one. First goal last year was to increase the failure rate to move students to grades of 75 or better. In retrospect, kind of Monday morning quarterbacking this one, this is a very ambitious goal last year considering the circumstances. Looking back on it. I'm not going to go through the numbers right here in front of you. However, our failure rate and our goal to improve it kind of the inverse. It got worse equally. And there are a number of reasons why, you know, if I can look at it, the year last year being in the hybrid wasn't the most ideal learning environment, but that's what we had to do. So I asked teachers to record interventions, and last year being what it was, it's the most common learning strategies, more like interventions, were giving students more time, allowing more time for students to finish their assignments. Communicating with parents, setting due dates, email reminders, extra Google Meets with students and parents and guardians. Try to engage students as best we can when they're not in the school building last year. So it was an ambitious goal last year. Unfortunately, it was the inverse of what I intended it to do. However, we are keeping that goal this year. I believe we'll see much better results coming from this year with all the kids being in school and being to meet with them, being able to meet with them more often, and being, you know, we have longer classes this year. We have 67-minute classes. That's enough time to teach your lesson as well as work within the classroom, work one-on-one with students. So that was kind of in response to that. So we increased the time in class this year to address those needs. Second goal for last year was the use of instructional technology to facilitate student engagement in remote learning. This was a successful one. Again, I think this was also in part due to our circumstances last year. So many of our staff and teachers learned how to use and use effectively many different programs and platforms. Google Classroom has become part and parcel of what we do in the classroom now. Each teacher has a Google Classroom up, their assignments are there, so they're very adept at using Google Classroom, docs, sheets, all the Google platform has been an educational savior in some ways. The Remind app, we looked at, the third goal, teachers learn how to use that more often effectively to remind students and to communicate with families. Screencastify, so you can record and actually message out to the classroom. Khan Academy, Excel, the list goes on and on. And one teacher reflected that it was a lifesaver last year, learning that technology, considering the circumstances. So that was a successful goal. It's also, it's carrying into this year. We obviously want all the kids to stay in school, but when a few of them have to quarantine, we are able to, utilize Google Classroom as well as go to the live streaming in the classroom to make sure kids are in the classroom and the teachers know how to use that. So when they're quarantining, they're live in the classroom. Teachers have done a great job with technology last year and into this year. Our third goal from last year was to improve communication and outreach efforts to parents and guardians in the community. In one respect, we did very well with that because if you look at the Remind app, they give out stats. We delivered over 214,000 messages through Remind app last year. That's a lot of messaging going out to communities and parents and households. I asked teachers to keep contacts through the campus and contact log. Over 930 some odd entries. So I think we were communicating, but at the same time last year, that was a bit of a victim of circumstance because kind of over-communicating, the populace kind of what I call communication fatigue. There are, some people who asked to not be on the call list, and get off the line list. So it was constant communication. I was hoping for a lot of authentic communication. Sometimes it didn't happen, but the Remind app, nothing's out there. But at some point, especially as we hit the third quarter-ish, some parents are just, we're done. But we were able to figure out ways to communicate with households. That was important, that would work. So, kind of in retrospect, we had some goals that were achieved and some weren't. And like I said, that first goal, increasing the failure rate, moving the students' grades of 75 or better, I'm keeping that this year. And this year, other goals I'm looking at is attendance, as well as student engagement and community building within the school. So that's my synopsis of last year. Any questions?
So you mentioned the last year in the classroom, were you saying that's carried over to this year in case they need to be quarantined?
Yeah, so when students in quarantine, attendance goes AQ, the teacher's able to see that. As students quarantine, and they can pull them into the classroom later. Kind of do what they did last year, is, get going with the classroom, get their camera going and their live streaming in the class, putting stationary camera and making their classroom available to that student, so they're able to get into that class.
Mr. Boyd, I just want to congratulate you for sending us all your gathering data on communications. I think this is a perfect example of getting back to Joel's question and the actual work that COVID has produced. And I just was amazed when I saw this, and I'm sure every other principal can probably all out the same kind of data. But the school board I know appreciates all the extra work that this has caused everyone.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone for
Ms. Lee?
Good evening. This evening I'd like to share with you the Albion Elementary School and Fairfield primary results level norms for math. In response to this data, our target for math will be a refocused use of Envision's math materials to include more manipulatives, more time on areas of student need for meeting state learning standards in math, and setting aside instructional time to address the areas of weakness in order to better help students in math. We believe use of manipulatives and adding in other effective math resources to deepen, expand, and accelerate is going to help construct their learning and support their thinking as they develop strategies to solve problems with the use of math manipulatives. Physical models are not just for primary grades. Models and manipulatives show multiple representations beyond a symbol in a book or on a screen, and it's necessary work that was limited last year during our hybrid school year. For literacy in Albion, while 79% made some growth from fall to spring, last year only 44% of Albion students made their projected growth in New reading, while only 43% met grade level norms for reading. In response as a staff, we are focusing in on a staff read and discussion of the literacy continuum by Dr. Pinnell that will strengthen us and keep us instructionally grounded in the 8 key areas of reading instruction. We will also continue implementing the Dr. Pinnell level literacy intervention in grades K to 3 that we started last year. It's an intervention that provides daily intensive small group instruction which supplements classroom literacy teaching. The LMI system promises to turn struggling readers into successful readers with level books used systematically designed lessons. We look to advance the literacy learning of students not meeting grade level expectations in reading, and will measure advancement through the assessment in reading, language, and fluency, which also measures the linear awareness and phonics. Our attendance rates during our hybrid and remote learning for Albion School was at 88.78%. It's never been that low. As educators, we recognize our cognitive learning can only take place in a safe and nurturing environment, and online learning did not work for our elementary students as they are not independent enough to access all their learning independently. We must reverse the relationship as seen through attendance rates from last year. Our social emotional learning and supports project is to use morning meetings for building a classroom community, deepening connections, and rebuilding school routines. This year, we're thinking naturals first, bloom second, using morning meeting as a tool for strengthening both classroom and school connections to help school attendance and stamina for learning. This year, we'll focus in on what students need first in this school year. We're hyper-focused on helping the emotional needs first to get us to stronger bonds for impacting learning. We will intentionally build a strong relationship with our students, promoting safety and creating a routine that is predictable and emotionally stable with natural check-ins, especially during those morning meetings. Morning meetings are most known as a classroom meeting predominantly used in early learning, but morning meetings can be helpful for students of all ages to settle emotions, support one another as a classroom community, and build agency for learning. This year, we are also working closely with our new support staff for behavioral health to help meet students' emotional needs, teaching guidance lessons weekly. We are investing time in this area to teach strategies for COVID stress to include mindfulness, an area of self-regulation we have formally developed in our school. For Fairfield Primary School, while 88% of students made some growth in math last year, only 54% of students made their expected growth from fall to spring, and only 56% of students were at grade level in math. So our project will be focusing on a hands-on approach, giving time to using our math materials differently in order to improve math outcomes for our students. Our hands-on math focus will allow for teachers to take time to dig deeper, even more than expected on a pacing chart, for manipulatives and supplemental instruction to help children excel in math. Students will have more time to construct their learning through center work or math stations, to concretize math and math numeracy. Using concrete thinking tools for math helps children with abstract thinking when students can touch and manipulate objects from everyday life to understand numeracy and mathematical relationships. For Fairfield primary literacy last year, 87% made some growth in reading, as seen on the movie for literacy. Only 62% of kindergarten students made their expected growth. In the area of fluency and phonological processing, 84% met or exceeded in listening comprehension. 87% met or exceeded in picture vocabulary. Last year, 51% met or exceeded in phonological awareness, and only 44% met or exceeded in phonics word recognition. So in primary literacy this year, we're going to focus in on intentional teaching in the area of phonics and phonemic awareness, building the reading brain through intentional teaching of phonics for lifelong reading and writing development. Our school improvement goal of literacy will be to focus in on our initial kindergarten baseline entry data found on the observational survey and moving fluency assessments and phonemic awareness, and by being more intentional in the teaching of phonics. In past years at the school, we have placed a heavy focus on text level goals determined by the administration of the DRA benchmark goals. Although end of year kindergarten data shows good results, with many children ending the school year at grade level benchmarks for reading, we are concerned that a number of children are memorizing the early text and high frequency words. When they approach unknown words out of context, we wish for them to also use their newfound decoding skills to solve for words. We look to improve and enhance children's understanding of reading and writing by being more intentional in phonics and phonemic awareness this year to give students deeper foundational strategies for decoding. Last year's results in attendance were at 91%. Typically, our attendance rate is closer to an average of 95 to 97%. Here are some of the changes we have noticed with our kindergarten students and how we are responding to our student population. 12 families chose to have their child wait a year to enter kindergarten. Others are just old enough to reach the cutoff between 4 to 5 early as they start kindergarten. There is both a range of ages in class as well as a range of social skill development. Despite age, all our little ones are showing their lack of experience working as a class, as a group, at a different pace than pre-pandemic. A number of our children have been isolated throughout the pandemic year and a half, or before attending kindergarten, which makes their emotions run high and their independence ability limited. To help our teaching staff at primary with social emotional needs of our K class, we are continuing our studies as a staff in conscious discipline. Last year, K teachers participated in training with KVCAP to learn an overview of strategies in conscious discipline. Conscious discipline is a social emotional learning program. It's a comprehensive social emotional intelligence brain-based method for classroom management. It's based on current grade research, child development, and sports developmentally appropriate practices. As a continued study of conscious discipline, our kindergarten staff is engaging in a book study on teaching and supporting identical study to